Welcome to the final video of Part 10 on carbon finance. Let's talk about how carbon removal actually gets paid for, because this is where finance meets the technology. Durable removal credits from things like direct air capture are seen as much higher integrity than the avoidance offsets we criticized earlier. A ton locked in rock for centuries is a far more credible ton than a ton saved by a forest that might burn. Although even here, durability and the quality of measurement, reporting, and verification still vary. Now, here's the chicken and egg problem at the heart of this market. Removal is expensive because it's tiny, and it's tiny because it's expensive. How do you break that cycle? The answer has been advanced market commitments. A coalition called Frontier, backed by Stripe, Alphabet, Meta, and others, has pledged more than $1 billion to buy future removals, guaranteeing demand so that suppliers dare to build. And remarkably, Microsoft alone has bought more than 80% of all durable removals to date. A single company essentially underwriting the infant industry. Why does this matter? Because direct air capture still costs somewhere around $100 to $600 per ton of carbon dioxide, averaging roughly $490, which is vastly above today's carbon prices of tens of euros. No normal market would fund that. So these buyers are deliberately paying far over the odds now to fund early supply and drive the cost down the learning curve, exactly as happened with solar panels and batteries. It's philanthropy and strategy blended together, seeding a market that doesn't yet make commercial sense. Let's put real numbers on the cost of each method, because the spread is enormous and it explains the whole strategic picture. At the cheap end, afforestation and reforestation costs roughly $0 to $50 a ton, but with low reversible durability. Soil carbon reversible durability. Soil carbon sequestration, around $10 to $100, also low to medium durability. Then climbing the ladder toward permanence. Biochar, around $80 to $200, with medium to high durability lasting centuries. Enhanced rock weathering, roughly $50 to $200. High durability. BECCS, around $50 to $200, with high geological durability. And at the expensive end, direct air capture, roughly $300 to $1,000 a ton. And today often even higher, $500 to nearly $2,000, but with high, permanent geological storage. Look at the pattern, because it's the fundamental economic law of this field. Durability and cost move together. The cheapest options are the leakiest. The most permanent options are the priciest. There is, at least for now, no cheap and permanent corner. Every buyer of removal is implicitly choosing where to sit on that trade-off between paying less and storing carbon more securely. And the good news is that costs, especially for the engineered methods, should fall steeply with scale. Now let me show you the gap between what's needed and what's happening, because it is sobering. Three numbers. The need, 7 to 9 gigatons of carbon dioxide removal per year by mid-century. The reality, in 2023, the amount of novel, that is durable, engineered, carbon removal actually delivered was just 1.35 million tons. And the flagship funding commitment, Frontier's advance purchase, stands at $1.8 billion. Sit with the first two numbers side by side because the mismatch is staggering. We need billions of tons a year. We are delivering barely over 1 million. That's a gap of roughly 1,000-fold. We're delivering something like 0.1% of what mid-century requires. So durable carbon removal today is essentially a promising laboratory experiment, not yet an industry. This is not a reason for despair, but it is a reason for realism. And above all, it's the clearest possible argument against treating future removal as an excuse to keep emitting now. We cannot yet remove carbon at anything remotely like the scale we'd need to clean up continued emissions. The mop is real, but it's 1,000 times too small. So the priority, overwhelmingly, must remain turning off the tap. Finally, the most controversial idea in all of climate policy, included here so you're aware of it, solar radiation modification, or SRM, a form of geoengineering. The idea is to cool the planet not by removing carbon, but by reflecting some sunlight back to space. For instance, by injecting reflective aerosols into the stratosphere, mimicative aerosols into the stratosphere, mimicking a volcanic eruption, or by brightening marine clouds. And here's what makes it so seductive and so dangerous at once. It's cheap and fast. Unlike the trillion-dollar, decades-long work of decarbonization, SRM could, in principle, cool the planet quickly and cheaply. But and these caveats are enormous, it only masks warming rather than removing the underlying carbon dioxide, and it does nothing at all for ocean acidification, which keeps worsening as long as carbon dioxide rises. The risks are severe. Termination shock, where warming rebounds violently if you ever stop. Uneven regional effects, where cooling helps some regions and devastates others' rainfall. A complete governance vacuum. Who gets to set the planet's thermostat? And moral hazard, the fear that even discussing SRM deters real mitigation. For our purposes, the finance angle is minimal. A little research and governance funding, but it is not an investable strategy. I include it purely as an awareness topic. It's speculative, highly controversial, and no substitute whatsoever for cutting emissions. But you should know it exists because you will increasingly hear about it. Let me draw this large chapter together with 6 takeaways. 1. Carbon finance measures, prices, and trades emissions to give cutting carbon a genuine commercial value. 2. Carbon taxes fix the price while cap and trade fixes the quantity. And the European Union's ETS and its new border mechanism, CBAM, lead the world. 3. Voluntary offsets face a deep integrity problem, as the phantom credit scandal exposed. 4. Carbon risk is at least partly priced. There's a carbon premium in both stocks and bonds, plus tail risk and stocks and bonds, plus tail risk and stranded asset risk, though markets may still be underreacting. 5. Reaching net zero also needs durable carbon removal, which today is far too small and too expensive, while solar geoengineering is cheap, risky, and no substitute for cuts. And 6. Mobilizing private capital for the transition needs Paris-aligned benchmarks, active engagement, and blended finance to de-risk high-impact projects. If you take one sentence from this whole chapter, let it be this: putting an honest, high enough price on carbon and getting capital to flow toward the cheapest, highest impact cuts is the single most powerful thing finance can do for the climate. This slide and the next collect the sources, and I genuinely encourage you to explore them. The academic literature here includes Bolton and Kasperczyk on the carbon premium, Ilhan, Sautner, and Vilkov on carbon tail risk, Vilkov on carbon tail risk, Dang, Gao, and Yu on how climate policy reshapes corporate finance, Uimke and Op on green capital requirements, which we'll meet again next chapter, and Flammer, Giroux, and Heel on blended finance. Several of these are at the very frontier of the field and would make reads. And the final slide gathers the policy and data sources, the World Bank's State and Trends of Carbon Pricing, and Convergence's State of Blended Finance, the European Commission material on the ETS, the CBAM regulation, and the EU climate benchmarks, the IPCC's 6th Assessment Report, and the United States Social Cost of Carbon Estimates, the Vera Offsets Investigation and the Core Carbon Principles, the State of Carbon Dioxide Removal Report and Frontiers Advanced Market Commitment, and the National Academies work on reflecting sunlight. That brings us to the end of Part 10, the technical heart of sustainable finance, where we've seen how carbon is priced, risked, mobilized, and removed. In the next chapter, we build directly on this to ask a bigger question. Is climate change a threat to the stability of the entire financial system? Thank you for watching, and see you there.